We are in Las Vegas for UFC 175 International Fight Week. It is a big week for fight fans, and of course, the featured attraction for me is UFC 175. The champ, Chris Weidman, taking on Lyoto Machida in a fight that a lot of people are really looking forward to. And in the co-main event, Ronda Rousey, one of the biggest superstars in the sport, taking on a long shot in Alexis Davis. So a big fight card with a lot of big fights on it. Let's take a closer look at it now. Well, as we do, let's start out with our biggest locks of the week, and I gotta say, there's a couple of them here. You don't have to be a genius to figure it out. Just look at the odds. It starts with Ronda Rousey. She is a massive, massive favorite over Alexis Davis, and I think there's a good reason for that. I do think Alexis Davis is a very well-rounded opponent. I think she's a very durable opponent and is going to be able to test Ronda Rousey in certain situations, but to be honest with you, Ronda Rousey's speed, her athleticism, her explosiveness, I think it's just a little bit too much right now, so I've got to go with Ronda Rousey right there, and I think that's a favorite for a reason. Now, let's take a look at one other one on the card. Uriah Faber, a huge favorite over Bruce Leroy, Alex Caceres. And I think there's a reason for that, too. As it turns out, Uriah Faber, listen, one of the biggest superstars in the sport. Bruce Leroy has put together quietly a 4-fight win streak that would be 5 fights if he hadn't tested positive for marijuana following one of his fights, which I think, come on, who cares about that, right? But anyway, this is a huge step up in competition for Alex Caceres. And listen, I got to say, it's going to be Uriah Faber. Our under-the-radar fight, well, listen, a fun one for me, a heavyweight fight. Matt Mitrione and Stefan Struve. Look, with Stefan Struve, this is a very entertaining fight for him because you think about the emotion and the pain that he's had to get through, getting over that heart issue just to get back to fighting. To be honest, I thought it was the type of condition that could very well end his career. Now he's coming back and fighting, and he's in our top 15 rankings. He's a legitimate threat at heavyweight. Meanwhile, Matt Mitrione, listen, I don't know if the guy will ever be a UFC champion, but the guy comes in to bang every single time he fights. So I think this is going to be a fun fight. I think it's going to be two heavyweights to just go in there and throw down from moment one. So I think this is one you definitely want to be paying attention to. But how about our fight tonight? Well, maybe a little bit of surprise here for me, but I'm going to go with Uriah Hall and Thiago Santos. Now, listen, a lot of people probably haven't heard of Thiago Santos. He's been fighting down in Brazil, but he's coming off the biggest win of his career, and he trained in America this time for the very first time. From what I've heard, it was the best camp he's ever had. Meanwhile, Uriah Hall finally got over that hump. You know, there were a lot of question marks around him. He was such a talent coming off the Ultimate Fighter, but he had a couple of losses, and people didn't know if he was the real deal. He picked up a big win over Chris Weidman last time out. This is two fighters that like to stand and bang, and because of that, listen, who doesn't like a good slugfest? I don't know how long it'll last, but I think these are two guys who are going to stand and trade, and I think both of them have a decent chin. I'm going to go with this one as our fight of the night. So what's at stake in our featured fights? Well, listen, anytime there's a championship belt on the line, you know what's at stake, a UFC title. There is no higher honor in the sport. But a little bit more than that, I think, for both these fighters. Listen, Ronda Rousey in the co-main event, I think she's a better fighter here, but I don't think it's enough for her just to win. She has to win with style. She's becoming that big of a superstar that she's got to actually have a little bit of flavor in there as well. She's trying to nurture this Hollywood career as well, and I think she's got to show people that she's capable of balancing both of those responsibilities and still being able to perform in the cage and lead the women's charge in the UFC. So a big, big fight for her. And, of course, Alexis Davis, if she pulls off the upset, obviously that would be life-changing for her. Meanwhile, in the main event, Chris Weidman, despite being the champion, despite beating Anderson Silva twice, because of the way things went down, he gets a little bit of hate and a little bit of doubt. Some people say he's not the legitimate champion. Beating a guy like Lyoto Machida would prove to the world that he is absolutely the deserving champion at 185 pounds. Meanwhile, for Lyoto Machida, it's a little bit of history on the line. Only 2 men before him have held the belt in 2 different weight classes, and that's Randy Couture and BJ Penn. He wants to join that list of people, and of course, right there, that's UFC Hall of Fame material no matter what he does for the rest of his career. So a big fight for both of these men. 2 titles on the line, UFC 175 on Saturday night. Stay tuned to MMA Junkie and USA Today Sports. We'll have you covered all week long at International Fight Week.